It takes a minute to ramp up. We're recording now, but what?
Oh, never mind.
Okay. I do listen to all the shows. I haven't listened to the Kentucky show yet. I've kind of behind.
No, there's something else. I'll ask you later. All
Okay.
right. So basically, greetings and salutations, Brian. How are you?
I thought you were kicking off the show.
How is our great splice artist doing today? Dude, we gotta have a Skype call, man, so we can like hang out and talk for a few minutes, man. It's like your Norm's wife on Cheers, man. Do you really exist or do you not exist? That is the question.
No, he's out there, man. Turning around our shows. I'm
just saying that, Brian. Where you never talk anymore, Brian. See, now that you don't like listen to our calls together, you know, I'm just not feeling the love, man. Just not feeling the love.
I don't know what to tell you.
It's all good, Brian, man. You and I are still good, man. We just got to talk sometime, man. We got to call me, okay? We got to talk.
All right.
No, I was gonna ask you about the. Did you realize the guy that? I'm sure you saw the play on TV where the guy like pushed Jalen Hurts, held him down on the ground.
Yeah.
What's the crap with that, man? How does the refs not see that shit?
I don't know. You know, the play and the action's going the other way, and
but they got the guys in the booth, right, who record targeting calls, but they can't like check that out. Apparently, I just looked at an article, and dude played at Viger High School in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah,
the guy who did it for Arkansas.
Yep.
I mean, I just can't believe somebody didn't.
Yeah, that was somebody who could talk to about that, but you know, a little bit dirty play there.
Oh, and by the way, I saw somebody say something that I found interesting, that they were talking about how few of holding penalties that we've had called against us, or excuse me, that we've had called on the team playing against us. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, how many holding penalties have we had this year, right? How many holding penalties have been called against teams with our great pass rush? And I don't think there's been a whole lot.
No.
Can you think of a lot of holding calls on their offensive line playing against us?
No. Not a whole lot. There's a couple. I mean, there was one Saturday that probably actually shouldn't have been called.
Right.
But not a whole lot, especially considering the reputation and the demonstration of the defensive front.
So
I don't know.
I just was curious. But all right, man, let's go ahead and start.
All right, I'm gonna come to you quick.
Okay. All right, Brian, we're starting now, Brian.
That's right. Ready,
hey, Brian, it's time to pay attention now. Here we go, man. Put your beer down.
All right. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Alabama Football Podcast, powered by Bama Hammer. Tom, this barbecue tastes good.
Man, this barbecue could have tasted a hell of a lot better if we would have put our foot on their neck, or put their foot on their throat, as Saban likes to say. While this is obviously a great win compared to winning by a point 2 years ago, we should have put this team away early and taken their will away. And while I'm happy we won by 19 points, this game could have been done at halftime.
Oh, absolutely. This is sort of the quintessential Saban midseason game, especially when he has a really good team, a team that gets it, right, with a lot of senior leadership, or a lot of at least leaders across the team. The team gets better, incrementally better, noticeably better every week. When things are presented as an issue in subsequent weeks, you see them immediately corrected, or very quickly corrected. And so it wasn't long. People were were lamenting the lack of a running game, and then Saturday happens. It only took a couple of games with a lot of penalties, and the number of penalties, especially against our offensive line, went way down. And so this is going to be an opportunity for the secondary to kind of to beef up, and we're going to see fumbles go down. But this is a game where we've seen evolution, progression up to this point, a really fast start against the Razorbacks, 49 points, a lot of sort of diversity on offense, some things to clean up on defense. All in all, I am ecstatic with this game.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, scoring 49 points with how little that we had the ball, right, is obviously a huge thing, right? I mean, we remember teams years ago that we'd be happy to win a 13-10 game against Arkansas where it would be 4 yards in a cloud of dust.
Sure.
And so obviously for this team to put up the points that they did with how few of possessions they had or time of possession tells you that this team can score with the best of them. There's just some few things on offense that we can break down here that, that I think could have made this game go differently in the first half and could have really put this game away.
Well, step us through it. What's something on offense that qualifies?
The first thing that I want to touch on real quick was the very first drive where, Damian Harris had come in the game. He had started the ball game. He had had a few good runs, and then we bring Josh Jacobs in for a breather on play number 5, and he breaks out for a 56-yard run to the 2-yard line. We have first and goal at the 2. In my opinion, before he fumbled the ball on second and goal, those two play calls, the package that we had in the game on first and goal and second and goal were atrocious. No offense to the guys that were in the game, but we should have brought the big uglies in, and we should have brought in Brandon Green. We had no Hale Hennons in the game. We had Miller Forrestal. No offense to Miller, the true freshman, but he's 225 pounds. We had Miller in the game. We had Dieter in the game. We had 3 wide receivers in the game instead of 3 tight ends trying to run the ball. And on first down, we got nothing. Second down, Miller at tight end, our third string tight end. He blocks down. He totally misses. He should have blocked out on the guy outside of him. He misses him. He rushes in. He nails Jacobs. Jacobs fumbles the ball. I'm not blaming Miller. I'm saying you got a guy in the game on goal line at the 1-yard line who's not typically in the game. Bring your big uglies in and run the ball 3 times and score you a damn touchdown. That was a bad way to start the game.
No, that's fair. I think if you're going to run the ball and clearly we've seen stuff, our coaches saw stuff on film that said, we can run against this team, then we don't need to advertise or there's no false pretense. Let's bring the big guys in. Let's get a quick touchdown that presumably we know that we could do with that kind of package in there. Put a Mac at a fullback and tight ends, and like you said, Brandon Green. So I agree with you. I think that's a fair way of looking at it.
Now, real quick, real quick, before the third down play, before they reviewed it and called it a fumble, and that was the right call. What's so ironic about that, Dave, is those first 2 plays we have the wrong personnel. On third down, when we tried to rush in there and run a play before they reviewed it, we brought in Mac Wilson at fullback. We brought in Brandon Green. We brought in Hale. And I'm thinking, Lane, you're 3 plays too late, man.
Right.
You bring the right package in on third and goal at the 1. Why didn't you bring him in first and goal? That's all I'm saying.
No, I think that's the right call. I think that we should have rotated the big guys in, for the first down play. And, one of the favorite things I like to say at the stadium is, line it up, run it again when you have that type of situation and you're having success and you've got the right personnel package in there and the right play dialed up, it's going to bust through. And so that's a play you could put the big guys in and say it's first and goal at the 3, run this play 4 times, or until you score. That would have been the nod to probably Saban ball, certainly what you and I would have done.
Well, and what's so ironic about that is in the third quarter when we were trying to take the air out of the ball. And the other thing they should have done too, no offense to Joshua Jacobs, is I think they should have brought in Bo Scarborough as well in that package.
Right.
And we sat there in the third quarter and we had a 2nd and 6 or something, and we brought in Brandon Green and we brought in Hale, and we lined them up in an unbalanced line to the right, and we ran the ball for like 10 yards. There wasn't anything, and actually it wasn't a pitch like you like, but the offensive linemen just were able to pull a little bit here to the right, and they just blew away the Arkansas line, and Bo Scarborough went for like 10 yards, and I'm thinking, damn, and we couldn't score from the 1. But yet we did that.
Right.
And what's so key about that to me, which and in a minute I'm going to talk about some great calls that Lane made. But what I find so mind-boggling about that is when he got back down to the goal line after Damian Harris's great run in the next drive, he said, "I'm not going to try to run up the middle anymore. I'm just going to run my quarterback around the end." Which, by the way, he scored with a great kick out block by Damian Harris. But it's almost like he gave up then, right? He got bit by running up the middle with the wrong personnel. So those next 2 times that Jalen Hurts scored, he took his quarterback around the edge, which I found that interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not disappointed with that play call. I think that's a good, especially in those situations, it gives you a +1 on offense, because the quarterback truly is a runner and not just a statue back there. And so it gives you a little different sort of matchup. And so in that setting with the, you've got the tight end crashing down and you've got the running back sort of kicking out, that's a good play call. That's a high percentage play call. And so I don't mind doing that, with a mobile quarterback. We got, we did that the first 2 scoring drives. And so, after that first possession, that was our second and third sort of possession. We got sort of a lapse there, a couple, maybe it was that 4th possession where we tried to do that, just, not all the way down in the red zone, maybe just inside the 50. And I thought those were kind of sloppy play calls. And those, the personnel grouping on the first drive, I'll definitely give you that one. And there were some sloppy, I thought, sort of usage of Jalen at other points in the game. There's probably 2 or 3 carries there he didn't need to have. But overall, I thought I was pretty impressed with the game planning and in some of the play calling. What else stood out to you that you really enjoyed?
Man, I had to go back and watch these plays because there were so many of them. There was 3 or 4 of them. Jalen Hurts 3 or 4 times badly underthrew his wide receivers.
Yeah.
And guys, we got to call a spade here. Okay, I don't care who's playing quarterback. There were 3 different times that I can recall that he underthrew guys that had he hit them in stride, it would have been touchdowns, which means Lane Kiffin made a hell of a call. Yep. He missed O.J. Howard, great play call. He missed the true freshman Miller, who would have still been running to the end zone. And I can't write this second. I think the third one might have been our Darius Stewart or Calvin Ridley. But there are 3 that jumps out at me that he badly underthrew. And I went back and I had to slow-mo the play like 4 times. And so he had a clean pocket, had nobody on him, and all 3 times, Dave, he threw off his back foot. He did not step into the throw. He wasn't rushed. He had nobody in his face. It was just bad mechanics. He literally threw the ball off the back foot and didn't step into the throw. And so what's scary about that is they won, they scored 49 points. They could have scored more.
Yeah. Now, some of those passes he did complete. Miller caught a ball that was well behind him. He would have scored on that. I think even the announcers called that out. I think OJ caught that ball.
OJ did catch the ball, but I think he would have scored had he hit him in stride.
Yeah. He definitely. I'm not disagreeing with you there. I think a couple of things. I think Jalen, on a whole, had a really good day. I mean, he was 13 of 17, which is a really good, percentage.
That's not too many passes. Yep, not too many passes.
Yep, that's not too many. That's in that ratio that you like. Those 4 incompletions, it includes at least one where he threw the ball away. And so that's a good incompletion. He had 4 touchdowns on the day, 2 passing, 2 rushing. He did have a pick, but I think this, right. I think he was consistently underthrowing, whereas if you look at some of the other games, it was a little more scattershot in how he has been missing. So that tells me he's thinking about it, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's not getting in his own head necessarily. He's working through a process. And so he's been a little more scattershot than this. Here he's consistently missing sort of the same way. That's progress. I think he's going to continue to evolve. And if you think about how he's already demonstrated himself, to the fans, certainly to the team as a leader, and what he's bringing to the table, I think he's going to be demonstratively improved even over the next couple games as he continues to fine tune that. And you think about, you're there except for let's step into the throw as opposed to your back foot. I mean, we saw, was it Coker last year did a lot of that, and he cleaned that up, and he became a much better passer. Well, that's something that Jalen can clean up and start connecting, start hitting those guys in strides, getting those touchdowns, getting those extra yards. That's something I think that's going to be fun to watch, because I think it's there. I think the writing on the wall, it's there. The dots are there. It's not like he doesn't have the talent. And then how do we sort of overcome this deficiency of talent? He's a high school. I mean, this time last year, he was in high school, right? I mean, he is a true freshman, baptism by fire, but he has a lot of the raw potential, a lot of the raw skills, and we're going to start to see some of it develop.
No, look, he had good stats on the game, right? People listen to this show so we can point out things and be fair about our team, and that's just, that was it. If it was one time, I wouldn't have brought it up.
Sure.
But because it was 3 times that, that were very key, big plays, that speaks to how good of a play call it was. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about, I was surprised at our use of formations to start the game. Like we keep running the sets with 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. Just lots of different formations. Like to start the game. To start the game, we did the Calvin Ridley sweep around the end, and I went back and slow-mode the 5 or 6 first plays, and it was all O.J. Howard was split wide as a wide receiver, but obviously he's a tight end. And so I found it very interesting how we were pretty much 4 wide in different variations of that. Sometimes 1 split out wide by himself and 3 trips to the other side, or 2 and 2. But I found it interesting how, every game to start the season now, Lane comes in with that package of 3 wide receivers and OJ, and he splits them all out there, with his, 5 linemen and his, Jalen and his running back. And I find it interesting that he's staying with this theory of, I'm going to stretch the edges to start the game, and he does it for those scripted plays.
Well, and I think it's a couple of different things. I think that, we have been running a lot of 11 personnel, and then when you have a Howard, he's flexible because he can split out. And if you get him, sort of mismatched or wrong, around, with the wrong guy, he can be, even more dangerous, right? And so what I think some of it is, I think it's right there, right? Because it's so, why is it always seem to be in the scripted plays? Well, because those are pulse-taking plays. How are they going to defend these plays? And if we can sort of decode, we probably have watched enough film that we have an idea, but let's watch them defend this. How are they going to defend this? And that's going to tell us how we think that we can attack them. It's almost like we're going to let us run our first series as a survey of your defense. Okay, now that we've taken the survey, here's how we can line up some future play calls. Here's how we can sort of take the temperature. And so when we do the jet sweep, and a lot of times we do hand it off, and that's a whole other conversation we can have. But who goes in motion, with or without Ridley? How does the defense adjust? And so we may have the play call that's we're going to jet sweep with with Ridley, but we may be watching the backside safety. How does he react to this? And so there's a couple of things going on there. When we split Howard out, I mean, we want to see who goes with him and how do they adjust their coverage, in that type of situation. Is that going to lighten up the box, or are they going to, are they anticipating and they want to cover them with an extra, safety or something? So I think a lot of those are sort of surveying the defense. That's my thought on that anyways.
Well, hey, real quick, this should have been the lead story on what jumped out at me for the game. It should have been that these were some of the crappiest referees I've seen all season, and I hope they don't do a Bama game the rest of the year. Because I can say that because I'm not Coach Saban and I'm just a podcast guy, so I can say they sucked because they sucked.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Brett Bielema's interview coming out of half when he was getting on. And look, I agree with him. It shouldn't have been, I can see from where the guy who threw the flag, it looked like a takedown on Deshaun Hand, but there's a reason he's not the one supposed to be making that call. And, because from the reverse angle, it didn't look like a hold.
That wasn't the only bad call, man. There were lots of bad calls.
No, I understand. I'm just saying I agree with his sentiment where he definitely gave the official down the road and he got a flag for it. And then he was asked about it. And he said, well, I just wanted to tell him how good of a job he was doing because, not only was he doing his job, he was doing someone else's job. So, tongue firmly in cheek, he must really be good at his job. And I just got a kick out of that. But yeah, I agree. There were some sloppy, play calls. What was the game? I think it was the Ole Miss game where there were so many. It was the Ole Miss game. There were so many, plays that went to review and so many plays reversed. And I think kind of the uninitiated might call that the worst officiated game because so many things were overruled. But that's actually how it's designed to go. Call it, with the most latitude of possible on the field, and then let's go get it right. These guys, they just missed things, and they missed quite a lot of things. And on the fumble that should have been a fumble by Jacobs at the beginning of the game, when you go back and watch it, they didn't even – the 5 people around the play didn't even think it was a fumble. The Arkansas guys running out with the ball, number 20, and they're all looking like, why does he have the ball? Dude, if it wasn't if this was 20 years ago, okay, that would have been Bama's ball, 3rd and goal at the 1, and you and I know we want it done the right way. I mean, that was atrocious that none of them saw that it was a fumble. Yeah, none of them even tried to see it was a fumble. Yeah, no, I agree, and there were other bad calls too, and in both ways, for and against both teams, calls and non-calls. There were some pass interference calls that I thought probably shouldn't have been called, and there were a couple I thought, well, I mean, if you're going to call that other one, you would call this one too, and so they just seemed kind of scattershot in how they were calling the game. I'm going to say, fortunately, and I guess it's easy for me to say because I'm speaking from the Alabama perspective, but I don't think they impacted the outcome of the game. They were just sloppy.
They were sloppy, man. They were sloppy, and even like that penalty on Rashaan Evans. I mean, that was a bad one too. Yeah. I mean, there were numerous calls that were bad, and I just wanted to make sure we got that out of the way here before we talked about something else. What jumped out at you on offense?
I'm going to tell you what jumped out to me on offense, and this plays into the time of possession, and we're going to hit that. We're going to ring that bell again when we get to defense. But of the Alabama scoring drives, we had a 40. We scored quickly. When we scored very quickly. We had a 46-second drive. We had a 2:02 drive. We had a minute 43 drive. We had a minute 31. And we had a minute 26, and then we had the 2 defensive scores, which really, 0 times on the clock.
And that's very Alabama, typical Bama, right?
What's that?
That's not Alabama, right? That's
no, not at all.
Do it.
And when you think about, and you said a minute ago about taking the air out of the ball, you almost want to joke and say, I don't know when that was, because of the 15 possessions that Alabama had, only 2. Sink in this for a minute. Only 2 out of 15 possessions lasted longer than 3 minutes. and one went 353 and one went 357. Tommy, those are short drives. A 3-minute possession, and I understand, we were using tempo a little bit more and all of that.
Yeah, but you
3
also
minutes, especially in a game where look, and you and I go into games thinking, hey, we're thin on defense. Let's do tempo and let's score some points, but let's pick moments in the game to preserve our defense and possess the ball. I would have expected us to do more possessing of the ball, especially once we got the lead. But and that's a little bit of, well, we can't help it if a swing pass goes 50 yards for a touchdown, and we can't help it if Josh and Damian Harris both break 50-plus yard runs.
Correct.
And Bo Scarborough runs for 20 yards. We can't necessarily help that, and we're not going to take those points off the board. And so it's a little bit of sort of counterbalance because,
but then when you have
most of the plays I called they were not down the field strikes. Those are all sort of line of possession. Hell, 3 of them or 4 of them are runs, and one of them's a little swing pass. So those are all sort of inside the box or inside, the 8-yard sort of window plays. So we can't help it that they scored fast in those plays. But man, you think also we got to possess the ball and protect the offense, our defense, and that's something that really stood out to me.
No, I'm with you, but like you said, you don't expect Josh Jacobs to break a 56-yarder when he came in. You don't expect Damian Harris to break a 57-yarder on the next series. You don't expect to, for them to fumble the kickoff, and then you got the Tim Williams play and you got the Minkah 100-yard play. You don't expect any of those things, right? And so what's ironic about what you just said about the time of possession is it wasn't till the last drive of the first quarter that we had one of those long drives, right? It went 3 minutes and 37 seconds. And what was interesting about that is it ended on a punt.
Right.
So that one we started at our 11-yard line and we ended up punting from our 37. So what I find funny about that is we only gained 26 yards of field position, and that was one of our longest time of possessions of the game, and it was only 8 plays for 26 yards. So
yeah, there were a lot of sort of misleading stats that way, right? It takes 3.5 minutes to gain 20 yards, but then we've got 50-yard touchdowns in just mere seconds. The time of possession, you would think that they won, and then they didn't, and then the sack and sort of turnover battle and beating up their quarterback, you would think that there's no way that they passed for as many yards as they did, and so there's a lot of sort of phantom stats here, which makes this game a little interesting. I think certainly, from our perspective, I just go back. I'm bullish on this team, and there's a lot to like in this game. And so I think, the stuff on offense, I don't want to distill it for you, but I'll distill it for me. The couple of things that we didn't like about offense are sort of pale in comparison to the stuff that we do like on offense.
Well, okay, Arkansas, should have a more dynamic quarterback, right? He comes in with a little bit more of a resume, right? Just because,
Sure.
of he just does. And so when you break down the final stats, we had 517 yards on 51 plays. They had 473 yards on 84 plays. And I'm not trying to read stats for guys here,
Sure.
but we averaged 10.1 yards a play. They averaged 5.6 yards a play. Right? Mm-hmm. So just in big picture, we had just as many yards as they did on 33 less plays.
Right.
That's huge. That's a huge thing, right? Now, I will say also in this game, not only did we underthrow some wide receivers before we flipped the field that we talked about, but we also fumbled the ball and gave the ball away inside their 10-yard line twice. And yet we still put up 49 points in this ball game. So
yeah, that's easily points, right? If you want to be uber conservative and say that's 6 points, all right. But I think it's pretty safe to say, especially if we put the big packages in there, that's 10 to 14 points. Add 14 points to 49 and tell me what number you come up with. That's a pretty big number.
So Halloween hadn't come yet, but this might be Halloween early because while I pointed out the underthrows just because I thought it was enough to point out, you and I have been doing this a while. For them to score 49 points at Arkansas on the road, fumbling twice inside their 10-yard line, right? 500 yards of offense? We hadn't seen that, man. So you got to call a spade a spade. I mean, that's there's a reason Saban was still happy about the offensive game in this ball game because I'm sorry, these guys are. I mean, our Darius Stewart, who was able to get ease back in this game, was just yet another weapon that you could put out there. And he had 5 catches for 120 yards, and it didn't even look like he did anything. And Calvin Ridley comes back after we overused Calvin Ridley. He comes back with 3 catches for 14 yards. So I guess my point is we got all these wide receivers, and we didn't even have to beat you over the head with them. We had 5 throws to Ardarius, 1 to a guy named Miller who you didn't even see on tape, and 1 to O.J. Howard. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like this team's got an embarrassment of riches, man.
It really does.
They really do. They have an embarrassment of riches. And when I watch this game with my young kids and I point out this player and I say, well, this player was the number 1 ranked running back in the country coming out of high school. And this player was the number 1 ranked wide receiver coming out of high school. And this player was the number 1 overall player in the high school.
Sure.
My daughter's like, Daddy, how does one team have so many number 1 overall players? Well, they're just freaking Alabama, man, and it's good to be an Alabama fan.
It definitely is, and Damian had a big day, 128. Ardarius had a $120, and unfortunately he had the fumble. But then if you do look at some of the other stat lines, for Josh probably would have had 100 yards had he not been hurt. But if you look at Bo and you look at and then start to look at some of the wide receivers and Howard and Ridley and their stat lines, and you say some of the guys that you might otherwise say are some of the best players on the team, it looked like they didn't really have an opportunity. And so when you say, man, there's some guys that had monster stat lines and some guys that look like, they were the step kids. And, it does, I guess embarrassment of riches is the right answer because, you think there's 2 or 3 other guys that we wouldn't be surprised if they had 100-yard, 2 touchdown days either.
No, absolutely, man. This team has just come a long way from the days of Julio Jones and Amari Cooper, where we were like, Amari and Julio, bail us out. I guess what I'm saying is this team doesn't have to count on one guy. And that might be due to Lane Kiffin, and that might be to Jalen Hurts, and that might be a combination of the two. Yeah. And so the other thing I'll say very quickly is once again, Jalen Hurts, they didn't overuse him. Not only did they only have 17 pass attempts, now they only had the ball for 23 minutes, and so like you mentioned, that's a little bit of a misnomer, but he only had 8 carries, which I like. I found it interesting of his 8 carries rushing the ball, 6 of them came in that first quarter and change. And so his carries came early, and then they kind of shut him down.
Yep. Give me your mini game ball on offense.
Man, I like it much better when you go first. Mini game ball on offense. Man, I'm going to have to give it to Bradley Bozeman. And I just keyed on him a lot in this ball game. I thought Ross had an off game. I thought Cam had an off game. They definitely missed some blocks and missed some plays. But Bradley, man, dude was on his game. I mean, every time I keyed on him, he was damn driving the Arkansas nose guard 3-4 yards down the field. We're going to look back at the end of the season and be like, well, damn, this is one of these unsung heroes. Maybe this is the embarrassment of riches again, right? You lose a 3-year starter at center. That's supposed to make a difference. Right. And we're not skipping a beat with Bradley Bozeman. And so I could have given it to other guys, but I had to give it to the big ugly.
No, that's fair. And I actually had a hard time figuring out, and I like Bozeman. That's a good pick. I had a hard time figuring out, who I thought I maybe wanted to give it to. And so, I'm going to go, kind of sentimental just the way that I do sometimes. I'm giving it to Miller, Forrestall, for his first catch. It was a good catch. As he was catching it, I thought, oh, he's going to drop that. And he caught it. He sort of rolled over and caught it. And like you said, it was behind him, and he otherwise would have scored. But I thought that showed, for a true freshman, and he only played 1 year of tight end in high school. He was a quarterback, up through his junior year. And so I thought that really showed some athleticism, and maybe it's a sign of something we've got there in him in that position. So I gave him the nod as my mini game ball.
All right, man. Well, in the true theory of the mini game ball, so flip the field on defense, man. I got some stuff to that you're not going to be too happy with, so I'm going to let you go first.
Just a lot of miscommunications in the secondary, and if you watch it, for those who watch all the player interviews, there's really no surprise there. But Minkah, Eddie, Humphrey, and Ryan Anderson all have commented on, we didn't play to our standard. We need to go back and work on this. And as much as I didn't like giving up the 400 yards, I really like hearing the leaders on the defense say that, and not just give it lip service, but they're serious about it. And so that's something, if you take the game and sort of some of the post game as a whole, that's, I think, what stood out to me. I didn't like giving up the yards, but I like seeing the leadership on defense. And that's what gives me the confidence that we can overcome some of this. And if you want to sort of break even some of it apart, Ryan Anderson covering Sprinkle, their tight end, it's a mismatch all day. And why they didn't go back to that, I don't know. I like Ryan Anderson as a leader, as a contributor, but he's an inside the box kind of player. You get him in coverage, I don't like that. And so the fact that there was a touchdown given away there, I hate to say I'm not surprised, but I think it's stuff that we can fix.
All right, let's start there, okay? We got to jump on this one first, okay? They consistently stayed in a 3-4-4 in this game, and I don't understand why.
Right.
They did not play their base nickel. This was well before Reuben Foster got hurt, and I got to tell you, there were many times that Ryan Anderson and Tim Williams were standing up. They didn't have their hands in the dirt at the end of the line of scrimmage in the 3-4-4. There were other times that they had Ryan Anderson and Tim Williams drop back in the box beside Reuben Foster and Sean Dion Hamilton as a true linebacker, right, in the 3-4-4. And
Williams batted the ball.
But Dave, but Dave,
we were dropping back. He batted a ball.
But Dave, they were sitting there in 3 and 4 wides,
right? And
we still had our third cornerback on the sideline, and I'm sitting here thinking, where in the hell is Anthony Averett? I thought he was hurt. I was like, okay, he got hurt. I didn't see it. The sideline person hadn't seen it. They hadn't talked about it. Why did I miss this, etc. And then I saw Averett come back in, and he would come in some situations in 4 wides, and then other times, okay, they never stayed in the base in 5 wides, but numerous times Arkansas on 3 and 4 wides, we had both Ryan Anderson and Tim Williams in the game together, and Averett was nowhere to be found. And so to your point, I couldn't understand that. That was dumb. And we did it at least 15 plays.
Yeah, I think we were convinced that they were going to try to line up and smash us in the mouth. And
we wanted to hedge our bet and say, we know you're going to run the ball, so Averett's going to stay on the sideline.
Yeah, so we're going to line up in more of our true base personnel, because that's what we're expecting that you're going to run at it. And even if you give us different looks, we think that you're going to try to run at us. And so we just overthought it, right? And look, there's a reality that says, going back a couple of weeks, Arkansas running the ball against us was a concern. We spent time, talking about them after our Kentucky show, talking about Arkansas running the ball against us and that being a legitimate threat. And so, to the extent that was a concern to us, it probably was a concern to our coaches. And so we probably said, oh, no, I don't buy this look that they're giving us. They're still going to try to pound the ball on us, and at no time did they really seem to want to try to do that.
I think I don't know if this has something to do with who we practice against every day, right? Because you know how Lane Kiffin will sit. We just talked about Lane Kiffin open the game with, 3 wide receivers and OJ wide for a 4 wide look, and he still ran the ball.
Sure.
And I don't know if there's something to that, and like, well, gosh, this is who we're defending against in practice all the time. Because my point is our base is our nickel. And if you sit there and you let Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson put their hands in the dirt and you rotate in guys to keep them fresh, and you got 4 down linemen, and then you got Sean Dion Hamilton and Reuben Foster, and then you got 5 defensive backs, and you slide one of those safeties down into the box for support, you got 7 guys in the box if you slide Ronnie Harrison down and let Eddie Jackson play center field.
Right.
I mean, what we said going into this Arkansas game is we've got to develop depth, okay? And we said we're concerned that we're seeing too much Daron Payne and we're seeing too much Reuben Foster, and I'll comment on that in a minute. We weren't saying we're concerned about you running the ball. We said we're concerned about how you run the ball against our backups, which, by the way, is still a concern from the 3rd and 4th quarter.
Sure.
Right? They didn't address the personnel thing wrong, and they repeatedly screwed that up. And I will also say, a couple of those big plays was totally on Eddie Jackson.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're an Eddie Jackson fan.
Sure.
On that big play where Minkah in the first half sat there with a minute left in the first half.
Yeah, he was out of position and slipped. There's no question.
But Minkah thought that here's the thing, okay? And so, Minkah said afterwards, I thought I had a pick and,
Sure.
I shouldn't have gone after the ball, etc. Well, yes, you're still a young guy, okay? You still technically are a sophomore. And so while you've got game experience, yes. And that goes back to my comment at the beginning of the show where I said we could have put, our foot on their throat, right? Well, you've got to understand that you're up 35-10 at the end of the first half and there's a minute left in the game. Just bat the ball down and make them punt, right? And run the clock out and go to the locker room. And so Minkah didn't do that. He tried to make a play on the ball. But Eddie Jackson, in my opinion, yes, he slipped. But you and I both know what he should have done is he should have been playing prevent there, right? He should have been well behind the play. And I'm just going to, if Minkah misses, I'm going to get you. You're not going to get by me. There's no way at the 50 I'm going to let you run another 40 yards. And so that garbage touchdown at the end of the half kept Arkansas in the game. And that just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and there's probably a little bit, and you're not going to hear Minkah say this because, I think they're good teammates, but and just it's a leadership thing. But he probably makes the decision to go on the ball first because he thinks he can get it. Second, he probably expects that he has safety help over the top, and so he thinks the backside's covered if he does miss it, and and so that's Eddie playing it wrong too, and so they both kind of played it wrong, you could argue. And, so Minkah goes for it and that, he doesn't get it. And so that plays right into Eddie being a little bit out of position. If only one of them had misplayed it, right, then it's not what it was. And it took both of them. And so that's an example of a play that's oh man, that's so frustrating. But when you go back and you look at it on film and and it's not because we hope that the players can overcome that. It's because we've seen them not make dumb plays like that. So when they go back and watch that on film, that's something that we trust that they can correct. Is it frustrating to watch? Yes. But am I confident that that's something that can be addressed? Yes, that's a yes as well.
So what do you think about this formation thing, though? Like, right there, when obviously Ryan Anderson before that touchdown, and you probably did the same thing watching this, like you sat there and called it was going to be a touchdown, right? Like you knew they were about to score, right? And so I know Saban likes to hold on to his timeouts and stuff, but right there when Ryan looked really clueless, okay, and what's so funny is, or not funny, but what's so frustrating is you could see for the first time all season a true breakdown in communication, because when you took out that third cornerback and you took Averett out of the game and you forced Minka and Marlon to like try to decide who they match up with, right? They all kept struggling, like who's guys who. They didn't know who to tell Williams and Anderson to cover, and the safety didn't know who to cover, and the cornerbacks didn't know which one they were going to cover. And it was like, can't you just call a timeout and like try to talk about this and get your crap together?
Yeah.
I was surprised we didn't call a timeout there to save that touchdown pass.
Yeah, at that point, or, you know, at least at some point, you got to realize, hey, I'm observing that there's a lot of, you know, communication breakdown. When we get back on the sidelines and we talk about it, we're talking about, you know, oh yeah, that coverage, we didn't know what to cover, and there's a reason, right? When we're in our base, truly, you know, 4 DBs, then Minka plays the cornerback position. But when we come, and so he's on one of the edges when we're in what you and I call our base, which is a nickel, then he comes down and he plays the star position, and Averett comes out and plays the other corner. And so it's not just that there's a fifth DB, but one of the DBs is changing positions. Like literally, he's a different position in the defense. And so it's not one change, it's really two. And so that's where you start to get, oh, I know how I would cover this in that other defense, but we're not running that other defense. And I got to think, what am I doing over here versus directing, you know, kind of the other folks. And we don't play it enough that you know, that it leads to that type of communication. And so why we didn't, and you know, the irony, I'll say this, the irony is, and this is where I just think we tried to outthink it. The irony is we can stop teams from running out of a nickel. We do it every day.
Right. Because we've seen it enough, right?
Right.
It's our base.
And so the default setting should have been, let's play our base. Let's not let them dictate. Then if we need to make an adjustment, then let's make that adjustment. But let's start doing what we do, because, guys,
see how it goes. Yes.
Right. Because it works. And it works up front and it works on the back end. And so we adjusted, I think, to sort of compensate for the front, which they never really attacked us that way. Again, probably they could have and should have, because they would have sort of wore us out. But guess what? They wore us out anyways. And then they did it in the secondary. And so, yeah, I'm sure that, you know, when he was upright, Allen got a lot of looks, and there were a lot of soft spots that maybe he was not anticipating, because he sure shredded, you know, what was out there for 400 yards.
No, absolutely. Now, I will tell you, not only did Eddie Jackson, okay, on that play where he slipped that gave up the 57-yarder to Cornelius to get him to the 16.
Yep.
But on the touchdown play, to be fair, I also think Eddie was out of alignment. They had trips to the right, and Ronnie Harrison was blitzing on the right edge outside of Jonathan Allen. So we are in a nickel. Ronnie Harrison is over on the right end. You've got trips to the right for Arkansas, and Eddie Jackson creeps up to the line of scrimmage to the box and doesn't give any help over the 3 wide receivers at all.
Right.
None. And that's where they completed the pass to Hatcher, which I can't even fault Humphrey for that. I know Humphrey was mad at himself that Hatcher, you know, made that touchdown right there at half, but I'm sorry. It was a great throw, skinny post. Safety should have given help over the top, in my opinion.
No. I agree with you. You know, I want to switch gears and talk about our defensive front. I mean, they were lights out getting after the quarterback. Pro Football Focus released stats, and they said out of 61 dropbacks, which, think about that, that's a huge number. Out of 61 dropbacks, he was pressured. Austin Allen was pressured 42 times, resulting in 7 sacks and 9 hits. That guy, I mean, if you watched him, his body language was awful. I mean, he was just shaking his head and just looking at the sidelines like, give me some help out here.
I loved it when his 6'10" left tackle one time literally picked him up by his shoulder pads.
Yes.
But now the other thing too is when we talk about the lack of depth on the defensive line and you're pinning your ears back and you're rushing the quarterback 61 times, that's going to be very tiring, more so than playing against the run.
It is. And I think we had 7 different players that had at least 4 pressures. And so we did try to rotate. I mean, we had true freshman Terrell Hall out there, and he got a sack and some pressures. And we tried to rotate a lot of guys sort of at the edges.
At the end of the game, we did.
Yeah. You're right, because we did play a lot of our, sort of inside guys and sort of main personnel. I mean, with limited exception, because I did see Josh Frazier. We came out in sort of a 2 defensive tackle look, and with a 4-man front a couple of times, and Josh Frazier was in there. We did get away from that. I think early on we realized, okay, we don't need to do this. But if you take away just those types of exceptions, we played 4 guys as our primary rotation across the defensive front. We didn't even see a whole lot of Dakota Ball until later.
Dakota Ball and Frazier were both pretty late, right?
Yeah.
Like Frazier, like to your point, when we had the fumble, okay, when Jacobs fumbled the ball and Arkansas came out with the ball, 1st and 10, right after the fumble, Josh Frazier was in on the very first play.
But then I don't think he played again until much later in the game.
He did not. He did not play again until he came in with Dakota Ball. That was his only play.
Right. And so so you saw the same thing that I did. It was primarily 4 defensive linemen rotating in for the vast bulk of the game. We're talking a lot of snaps here. And it was Deshaun Hand coming in, and he would come in, and look, he's a caliber player. I would put him as our top flight guys. But there were times when we would use him to sort of create a rotation, and there were times where Dalvin Tomlinson would go down to the inside. So when he would otherwise maybe need or deserve a break, he was going in to backfill for Daron Payne, and we got some sort of like bob and weave of how we were rotating. We got to have 3 of them out there, and there's only 4 of them, and how do you sort of allocate and manage the snaps? And towards the end of the game, it was visible on TV that they were just gassed.
But see what's so funny about that. And by the way, the reason I think we saw Frazier on that one play is it was 1st and 10 at the Arkansas 1-yard line.
Right.
They were right at the 1-yard line.
Right.
But this goes back to the alignment we said earlier. If you had played your true base nickel and you had let Ryan Anderson and Tim Williams be in that rotation, in the 4-down line rotation, right? You give the guys more wind.
Right.
But because you played a 3-4-4, Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson were not able to help. They were not able to help in the rotation for Daron Payne and Dalvin Tomlinson.
Right.
You exasperated the situation. You put more pressure on Dalvin Tomlinson and Daron Payne. Hell, that's who we should give the mini game ball to, because those 2 guys played. I mean, I wish I had a snap count of how many damn plays those 2 guys played.
Yeah.
And actually you called it 4, but to be fair, a lot of times it was Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and Dalvin Tomlinson. They were the guys.
No, it was.
They were the guys.
But Hand was in there, and Tomlinson went down, and some of that was probably a little bit later. But there was one time, and this was later in the game, I saw Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen on the sideline together, and I was like, "Who's tending the store?"
Well,
if you guys are over there on the sideline, who's in the game?
Well, I will tell you, and this is something we should touch on now. So obviously we talked about the depth at the inside interior defensive line position, which once again was basically covered with smoke and mirrors by bringing in Jonathan Allen and bringing Deshaun Hand inside. And then when Reuben Foster gets hurt, when he flies over the pile and lands on his helmet and lands on his head and knocks himself out of the game. I think the only reason we saw depth develop there is because their hand was forced. And so while they didn't show depth for Daron Payne that we talked about before this game, Rashaan Evans got called to duty only because they had no choice. And so it was interesting that they brought Rashaan Evans in right away, and he played the rest of the game and got some valuable time in the game, and he looked comfortable. I'm not saying he's there yet,
sure.
But that speed that he played with inside, I'm sorry, it was a CJ Mosley glimpse. Okay,
yeah.
Listeners, don't think I'm full of shit, man. Fast forward a year from now, and you'll be like, look at number 32.
Yeah,
and that's going to be fun to watch.
No, it will be. It's and I our hand was forced. That's probably pretty close to being right. But you can look at it and say, at least you're bringing in Rashaan Evans, and we can feel comfortable about that. If our hand is ever forced, for Daron Payne, then it will not be as comfortable of a feeling as, oh, we've got, so-and-so who I feel really good about coming in. And so, that was a great opportunity for him to get some reps, and he'll be a better player for it. We don't have that level of proxy at the nose guard.
No, they lucked into the Rashaan Evans thing. But the reason I pointed out is we said a year ago, right?
Yep.
Who are we going to find in the middle? We said a year ago, Rashaan Evans.
Sure.
And we said this might be the guy in the future that they move inside. So I just want to pat ourselves on the back on that one.
No, we did. But I'll tell you what, though, talking about the inside linebacker, Sean Deion Hamilton, I think had his best day of his career. He was really laying some wood out there, and he had 9 total tackles. I think Hamilton had a phenomenal day.
I think Reuben Foster going down helped Sean Deion Hamilton.
Yeah, but he was doing some of this when Foster. I hear what you're saying.
He had to handle the load a little bit. He was calling the plays for the front 7 when Reuben went down, and it's almost like his play was elevated a little bit when Reuben went down. That's all I'm saying.
That's fine. He was doing some of this before Reuben was in there, so I'll give a little yin and yang there. But what I'll net out saying, I feel really good about us having 3 middle linebackers.
No, that's fair. Now, I will say that we should have seen Keith Holcomb, in my opinion. We should have seen Keith Holcomb much more than we did.
Yep.
We saw Christian Miller in pass rushing situations. We saw Anthony Jennings when Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson were gassed, and we consistently stayed with that damn base 3-4-4. Anthony Jennings came in for Tim Williams on the outside on the 3-4-4.
And we talked about how we can situationally bring in depending upon what we're going to do, because we have that level of sort of depth there. We just don't have it everywhere.
No, we don't. And I will tell you, so the other question that you just said about Daron Payne was answered. It was answered huge by Todd Blackledge doing the commentary on this game. I don't have the breakdown right in front of me of the number of passing yards that, well, I guess they had about 200 yards in the first half. So they had about 200 yards Arkansas did in the second half then. Sure. But the biggest thing in the second half, which I found interesting, is we did not bring our starters out on defense at all, even though they had run so many plays. We just simply brought in Dakota Ball and Josh Frazier, with finally the true freshman Deshaun Hand, and then finally Terrell Hall. And Todd Blackledge was like, look what this guy can do when he's got time to throw the ball. He's shredding them because he's got time to throw the ball. Right. And so that answered your question about the backups. The backups are not ready.
Yeah.
And Dakota Ball and Josh Frazier, I know why we haven't seen Josh Frazier earlier now. Josh Frazier is not ready to be a backup.
No, he's not, and that's unfortunate. But
my point is, they got to find somebody else quickly because he did not pass his audition.
No, and which begs, where do you go to find him, right? You can't sign someone off there are no street free agents, and in college football.
Yeah,
So,
but there's some other true freshmen that you said you wanted to see, and I think it's time to pull some more red shirts.
well, that'll be interesting to see. There are some other guys, but there's a part of me that says if they haven't done anything yet, then they're probably not likely to. But I'm gonna root for being wrong on that one. Let me ask you this, and this will sound like a silly question, but in the context of what we're saying, I think it's serious. Do you think there was anyone, defensive players, maybe even coaches, wishing that Minkah had just taken a knee instead of returning that?
I think that Minkah only returned that because of Eddie Jackson.
Oh, without a question.
And while I had to call Eddie Jackson out a minute ago because he's a senior leader and he had a subpar game for a few plays, that was a hell of a play. That's Eddie Jackson being Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson, that's why he's such a damn good punt returner, because he was able to turn and look up the field and turn to Minkah and say, "Come on, man.
Yeah, he's
touchdown right here."
He
wasn't Eddie Jackson. Right? Minkah would not have done that.
No, well, if you look at how Minkah caught it, Minkah had his back to the field. I mean, it just the athleticism of him catching the ball, because he really had his back to the field, and then he caught it. And Eddie was just right there juxtaposed, right, where he was facing the field. And so he could see, what Minkah couldn't. And had Eddie not been there to sort of convey that message to him, Minkah probably would have just taken a knee. And that would have been okay. And look, it was a phenomenal play. I'm not trying to I don't take away from that for a second. But there was a part of me, as I was cheering and watching the touchdown, I thought, congratulations, defense, you scored a touchdown. Now you get to go back out on the field.
When you're already freaking gassed.
Right. It's like, yep, that's how it works. It's like, I don't know. Can we cash in for something different?
But what does that say about our depth at secondary for a moment? Because we had not played because we played a true 3-4-4 in this game for our base. And so Anthony Averett did not play as many snaps. Did you find it telling at the end of the game when we did not see Deontay Thompson or Carter? Seriously, like, I thought it was very telling that we're like thoroughbreds. We won, we're riding you to the end, even though they've had the ball for 80 plays. Like, I found it very interesting that we didn't give Humphrey or Fitzpatrick or Minkah any relief whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like the only guys who got some relief were the outside linebackers.
Right. I found it very interesting that we said, hey, Eddie, Ronnie, Marlon, Minkah, just, get you some oxygen when you come off to the sideline and get back out there. I mean, like, we didn't see any of the guys we saw earlier in the season.
It really goes back to, Saban's serious about, the fitness and the conditioning programs. And that fourth quarter program is, it must really be no joke. Because those guys, the big guys, you can see them kind of slow down, but the little guys, you didn't see a whole lot of that.
No, and they're sitting there running 40-yard pass routes with the wide receivers every play.
Right.
Dude, I'd be like freaking on a stretcher.
It's pretty impressive, I'll have to say. And it goes back to sort of every, Saban is the master of, I'll call it kind of like the master of the mosaic. Just do every little thing, and it adds up to what it needs to be. And so what it needed to be is everyone fit and ready to play the full game. And guess what? They were.
But this goes back to the embarrassment of riches real quick, right? I think if this team doesn't have Marlon Humphrey and Minkah Fitzpatrick, who were such highly recruited national cornerbacks, this team would have lost this game. Right.
No, there's no question. And think if we had, and I hate to this far into the season keep bringing these guys up, but what if we had Sheffield and Mo Smith? Then guys could have gotten a little bit of a break.
No, that's true. That's true. Well, talk me real quick. Well, Talk me real quick about well, give me your mini game ball unless you got something else on defense.
No, I'm good. I tell you, my mini game ball, I am giving it to. I'm going to fall into the Tommy trap because this guy's a bigger player, but I'm calling him out for the mini game ball for a very specific play.
Can I say who you're going to give it to?
Yeah.
Hootie Jones.
Nope.
Oh, damn. Okay, who?
Jonathan Allen.
Ah, that is definitely not mini game ball worthy.
But I
That's
tell
a
you
party
what,
foul for sure.
well, I am giving Jonathan Allen mini game ball for one play. And I even wrote in, sort of the things that I learned this week watching Alabama. This was one of the bullet points that I put in my article. Jonathan Allen demonstrated exactly how smart he is. So remember the Ole Miss game a couple of weeks ago. He had an interception return for a touchdown, and he had to haul 75 yards. And the whole sort of defensive guys that were escorting him, they were more into celebrating than they were escorting. And so
they were not paying attention to the guys behind them. Yes.
Right. And so a defender came and actually tackled Jonathan in the end zone, but it was a touchdown. He had possessed the ball. And so he learned from that. He was like, that's a long ways to run with a lot of people not helping me. And I get tackled in the end zone for all my troubles. And so when Tim Williams picked up that, and it was only 23 yards, but when he picked it up and started running, Jonathan Allen was part of the convoy. And Jonathan Allen spied a defender coming up, sort of coming up the sidelines. And Jonathan Allen just said, look, I'm going to do two things that are going to benefit everybody. I'm going to go knock this guy down, and then I'm going to stop running. And I just got the biggest kick out of, look at Jonathan Allen going to peel off that guy. So, and Tim Williams is faster, all that. It's not a 1-for-1. But if you suspend that a little bit, he goes, he's doing that because he wishes someone had done that for him. And then he realizes when I hit him, then I don't have to run to the end zone.
No, this is true, right? And
So-
and I will say on that play, which speaks to this is why you practice it in practice, right? I mean, man, Deron Payne also leveled an offensive lineman. Was very excited about it, leading the way for Tim Williams. But when him and Jonathan Allen peeled back right after Tim Williams picked up the ball, dude, it was like, man, you couldn't coach that any better.
Right.
Either one of them, how they sat there and led that caravan at 315 and 295 pounds or 291 pounds. I mean, it's like you do the drill in practice, and it wouldn't have looked that good in practice as it did in the game.
Right. I agree. Give me your mini game ball.
All right, I got two, man. So first of all, one that's not going to track how you like to do it, but I don't care, is Hootie Jones.
Okay.
Because Hootie Jones had both of his hands up, and he was celebrating Jonathan Allen's interception in the Ole Miss game. And he's the main guy that was responsible for letting the receiver run up beside him and not pay attention. Even though Ronnie Harrison was screaming at him, guys coming up, guys coming up. So Hootie Jones got a lot more snaps when they went, they seemed very comfortable putting him in the back with Eddie Jackson in the dime. And so obviously he had a nice interception, but he also had a hell of a strip on the special teams play on the kickoff coverage. And so I think this was the best game of Hootie Jones's career as an Alabama football player. This is what we were looking for Hootie Jones, right, with his pub coming out.
Right.
I think this was a game we were looking for Hootie about 18 games ago, and we got it.
No, I'm with you. And it's
And I don't mean that critical. This was his coming out party. We are going to see Hootie Jones make another key play on this stretch run. This was his coming out party in this ball game.
I'll equate it to this, and it's not 1-for-1, but it's in the same place. It was a handful. It was a couple of years ago where it just seemed like Nick Perry was never going to sort of get it, and then it clicked, and then he got it, and it was visibly comfortable in the secondary, and the secondary improved. As a result of having him perform better and I think he was a lot of the times, he moved up. I don't know, he kind of bounced around free safety, and then he was a dime back, and But he reached a point where he was a lot more comfortable, and that contributed overall to the performance of the defense. And so if Hootie can be that guy, right? If he can be demonstratively more comfortable with every sort of passing week, then yeah, that's going to be one of the things that's going to contribute to the secondary really flipping the switch on what happens Saturday. So I root for that.
No, absolutely. Now, my other game ball, okay, because I got to get this out before he makes some big plays.
All right.
Has to go to Terrell Hall.
Okay.
And so at one point, I just paused the camera and I just showed, the people I was watching the game with. I said, you see that guy? I said, he's a true freshman. You see how much bigger he is than these other guys? I said, that's why Nick Saban is so great at what he does, because of how full the cupboard is and how much he stacks in his cupboard. Terrell Hall, I keyed on him a lot at the end of the game because it was him and Dakota Ball and Josh Frazier. And he put significant pressure on Austin Allen from the time he got in the game. And he kept getting a mitt on Allen. He didn't get a sack until the end, but 2 or 3 times he had a handful of jersey. And so he'd reach over, the offensive lineman and grab Austin Allen's jersey. And so I was glad he finally got a sack there. Dude, we're going to see some plays from this kid before the season's over.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Anthony Jennings is one of those guys. I think they're right there.
Not like Terrell Hall. No offense to Jennings. Hall's got something different. Man.
That's fair.
We're going to see some. We're going to see some big rabbit rushing package play from Terrell Hall by Mississippi State Auburn game.
Okay. I just think across the board, I just think the next generation of torchbearers are there, which is exciting.
No, absolutely, man. So talk me some special teams, man. I already stole your thunder with Hootie Jones, but what jumped out at you on special teams?
Well, I like JK doing what JK does, 4 punts, averaging just over 51, 51 and a half yards. I tell you, the biggest sort of grin that I had, though, on special teams is when Arkansas did the onside kick and our Darius Stewart was there to grab it.
It was nice having that comfortable blanket there, right?
Well, it's exactly what we talked about a couple of weeks ago during the Ole Miss game, that Calvin Ridley was there. Would Calvin had been there if our Darius were healthy? And we both said no. And so, look at that. That's our Darius Stewart right there. And I just got a big kick out of that. Like, well, I mean, who would have known that we would have had an opportunity to maybe be proven right on that one? But there it was.
What'd you think about the main thing that jumped out at me, man, is what'd you think about Marks being back there on kickoffs? That shocked the crap out of me. He was the only guy who returned kickoffs. He returned 5 of them for us.
Yeah, I mean, it shocked me just for a minute, but that's probably about all. I don't think we're going to put Eddie back there returning kickoffs. Punts, yes. Kickoffs, probably not. And I think that our Darius, if he weren't one game, this was his game back from injury. I think when he sort of gets back, maybe call it up to full speed, that he may be back there some more, and he may be splitting some time back there. And then you can talk about Trayvon. He was sort of peaking up, and then now he seems to be trending down. And then, there's been some reports coming out of practice that he's been wearing different sort of wraps and stuff. So, don't really know what the issue there is. And so when you take all of that as a whole, I'm not that surprised that Xavier is back there. There's a part of me that said after what he sort of the stunt that he pulled at the end of the game last week, that he wouldn't be back there again. But that might just be a little bit of vindictive. If you look at the whole around, well, who else are you going to put back there? Then he's probably as good of a pick as anyone else because it keeps some of the other guys, some of the frontline guys, from having to do that.
No, that's fair. Well, let me throw real quick here. I know we've run long here. Let me throw real quick the screw up play at the end of the first half. Saban's interviewed at the half, and he just simply, shrugs it off and says, well, if we had made it to the 35, we would have been under his range, and we were not, so we were out of his range. I think that was a cop-out answer. We had first and, we had 2nd and 4 after the throw to Dieter at the 37, and then Damian Harris sits there and loses 2 yards back to the 39 and let the clock run out.
Yeah.
You simply take your quarterback and you take your quarterback and let him center the ball for you and you kick the field goal. You take a chance there for points. This isn't Auburn 2013. I don't like them not trying him there at the 37, try a 54-yarder, try to get 3 more points on the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we went into that not knowing what we wanted to do. And then by the time we figured out that, maybe we can try this, it was too late.
That's fair.
Which is not an excuse. You should know what you want to try to do. I'm not saying that that's a cop-out. That is the error. We should have known what we wanted to try to do there. Are we going to just let this run out? Or are we going to – and I see sometimes where we're just going to run the ball up the middle. We're going to let time run out. And someone busts a 60-yard run. Well, then, okay, now we might try to do something different. But we weren't planning for a 60-yard run. In this situation, it's just we acted like we didn't know what we wanted to do. And by the time we figured it out, it was too late.
Oh, that's fair. Well, tell me what you think about, some lovely Tennessee fan has decided to have fun with the Nick Saban statue today. Which was a nice start to Tennessee week. What do you think? Did you get a chance to watch any of the Tennessee Texas A&M ball game?
Yeah, I did. I watched a good portion of that, and then switched over to our game. Ironically, and it's not the first time I've done this season. When I flipped the channel, I thought, Tennessee's going to lose this game. And then even some of the updates at one point, with like 3 minutes left to go in the game, they were down, by multiple scores. And when I saw it went to overtime, I was like, holy cow.
How do you have 7 turnovers on the road and still almost beat an undefeated team?
I don't know. They have had a little bit of a silver spoon up their rear. And I wonder if that has not been, displaced.
I'm just saying that says a lot about where this program has come to have 7 turnovers and still almost went on the road to an undefeated Texas A&M.
Oh, without question. And then if you consider some of the players that either didn't make the trip or didn't play.
Starting running back, starting middle linebacker, et cetera, yes.
Or got hurt in the game, and they lost players, to injury during the game. And so they demonstrated, look, we make fun of Tennessee all we want to. They are demonstrating a level of heart this season that –
they have not done in years.
No, they've not, and it's very impressive. I mean, even to come back, and whatever sort of the scenario was, but even the opportunity that they had to tie the game in regulation was built upon a DB chasing down a ball carrier and knocking the ball out inside like the 3-yard line.
Yes.
If that ball just rolls the right way, Tennessee doesn't get a chance to have the ball. And so it's an effort coupled with literally the ball bouncing the right way that even gave them a chance to drive the field to tie the game up. And so you think of the improbabilities there. At some point, and you could argue it happened against A&M because they went on to lose the game. At some point, those things stop happening. You just don't know. And so what you wonder is, how emotionally draining was that game?
Exactly.
The 2 overtimes. I started looking at our defensive, when we were talking about how many plays we played on defense, and I started to think, well, at least I'm glad Tennessee played a 2 overtime game because there's some sort of parallel there. Now, I'm not rooting for their guys to be hurt and not able to play. I don't mean anything in that direction. I'm just saying if they're already going to have some level of players not available, and then they've racked up those type of play counts, and then it was the emotional sort of wrenching experience, then what type of hangover might they have this week? I don't know. If they don't, then they're an especially dangerous team, and we have to be ready to come out and play against them. Can I think we do it? Yeah. If we play Arkansas, if we play Tennessee as well as we played Arkansas, plus we fine tune, the fumbles and some of the secondary, then we should have no problem beating these guys. But there's a little bit of voodoo. It seems that that they've got bottled up. That we probably need to be conscious of that.
Well, I absolutely think they had to pull one out against a Georgia team that is not as good as they have been in years past.
No,
The win against Florida doesn't look quite the same now, which was a 10-point win at home, and prior to that, Appalachian State, Ohio, etc. So I do think this is a team that's a little bit what team you're going to get right when they step on the field. I think that this game's going to surprise me like it did the Arkansas game as far as the final score. I think that we are going to, because of who we're playing, I think we're going to want to get out on them early and try to, take the life out of them and kind of not give them a chance to feel like they can get back in this game like they have for 3 weeks in a row now. And so I surprisingly think that this is going to be something like a 41 to 16 type of ball game. Wow. I think we're gonna put it on them early, and I think we're going to try to put our foot on their throat like we did not do against Arkansas.
Well, I think that would be great if we could do that, and if we could do that in a way where we possess the ball, for the lion's share. If we could possess the ball 35 minutes, I think that that would be great. A distribution of yards across our running backs, and then giving our defense an opportunity to kind of rest. I mean, that would be quite a prescription. I see it as a tighter game. I've got it sort of a 27-17 type game.
Okay.
But I'm gonna root for you to be right on that one, because I think I think that would make a statement, and then that would give us a chance to play more guys, give more guys some rest, and develop some of the younger guys. So yeah, I have to root for that.
Because we need to get guys ready for Texas A&M, because Texas A&M's got their bye week before we go to their house. So
right, but it's a double-edged thing. We can't be thinking about that, but we got to think about that a little bit.
No, absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of the Alabama Football Podcast. Thanks for listening, and roll Tide. All right.
You forgot to ask for comments, man.
Huh?
You forgot to ask for comments.
Yeah, in the middle of me saying that last part, I realized I didn't say that, and I knew that was going to be the first thing that you were going to say.
It's all good. Well, that was a good short show, Brian. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. I'm glad we just banged that one out, here before it's, got really super late.
I will tell you, I enjoyed it. So, I don't really give a shit if the listeners enjoyed it. I enjoyed that. So,
no, I understand. Hey, Brian, thanks for all I'm going to turn off the recording. Hey, Brian, thanks for all your help, man.
Thanks,